Hi, I'm Father Joel, and thank you for tuning in to Pilgrim Priest. I'm grateful to all of our listeners, mission partners, and supporters, especially to Tammy, who just celebrated 6 years as a patron through patreon.com/pilgrimpriest. Thank you, Tammy, for your support, and thank you for tuning in. God bless you. What is healing? How would we define healing? The Pope John Paul II Healing Center defines healing as an encounter with God's love and truth that brings us into wholeness and communion. Now, the Healing Center works not so much with physical trauma. It's not an emergency room, but it works more with spiritual and emotional trauma. When we think of physical trauma, we often think, okay, well, I'm healed because the pain went away, or I'm healed because the motion returned, or I'm healed because this problem that I was experiencing, I'm not experiencing anymore. And those things can be similar, but when it comes to emotional or spiritual healing, it's hard to see that we are limping. It's hard to see the need for healing. And so the John Paul II Healing Center refers to healing in this broader sense of an encounter with love and truth that brings us into wholeness and communion. Let's take a look at today's first reading and see if that matches up. Naaman the Syrian, this is a famous healing scene from the Old Testament. The prophet Elisha is working in Israel. And off in a foreign country, the enemies of Israel, the Syrians, have a general, a very successful general, Naaman, who contracts leprosy. And leprosy at the time is an incurable, chronic, and disfiguring illness that people are scared of. It can be contagious. And so lepers typically are banished from the community. And so the real burden of this disease is not just the fact that you get sick, but the fact that you get sick and you're alone. You're alone in that illness. So Naaman can't find a cure. He's invited until he goes to the prophet Elisha. Now he shows up at the prophet Elisha's house. He's brought a bunch of gifts with him to pay for a cure. And the servant of the prophet comes out and says, hey, just go down to the prophet that says, go down to the Jordan River and bathe 7 times. Naaman is offended. He's like, I came all this way to go jump in a lake, to wash in a river. We got better rivers back in Damascus than this stinky Jordan River here. I'm not doing it. But his retinue gathers around and they're like, if the prophet had told you to do something difficult or complicated, you would have done it, right? Yeah. So why don't you do this and see if it works? Well, okay. So he bathes in the river 7 times, and he comes out, and his flesh is as clean as a little baby's, soft as a baby's bottom. Now, there's a spiritual component here. You'll notice that he's powerful, he's wealthy, he's successful, but his strength and ability is not enough. He comes up against an illness, and he's no match for it. And so that makes him feel powerless. Well, what the Lord is inviting him to is not to figure it out, not to pay for it, not to use his skills and abilities, but rather to admit that he really is still at heart a child, and he needs his heavenly Father. And so his childlike obedience leads to him becoming childlike and healthy again, right? It brings him into wholeness. It also brings him into communion, because he then says, what can I give you? And the prophet's like, no, I don't want any gifts. And he says, well, can I take some dirt home with me? I want some relics. I want to start worshiping the true God. He's been moved from worship of the idols of Syria to the true God of Israel because that God has cured him. He's experienced the truth of who he is and who God is. He's experienced God's love for him, and this brings him into greater wholeness physically and spiritually and into deeper communion with God. And this, I think, this movement is really beautiful. We can see that same movement in the second reading, where Paul has already encountered Jesus, which changed his mind from persecuting Christians to being one himself. Now he himself is being persecuted. He is chained. And yet he doesn't get mad at God. He doesn't get angry. Rather, he sees his sufferings as an opportunity, something that he can offer. So he's recognizing even the burdens in his life, even the sufferings, as a gift from God. What gratitude, huh? What a great opportunity for a different attitude. You know, we all need healing in various ways, and I really wasn't aware of all the ways that I needed healing. And I'll be honest with you that when we started our stewardship program 5 years ago, I thought it was everybody else who needed to learn how to be a better steward. But in the course of the program, I've realized how much I need to be a better steward. When your financial donations come forward, I thank God for that gift. I offer them up to God, and I say a little prayer of thanksgiving for your generosity, and I ask God to bless you. And then I put the basket over here in front of St. Joseph, who was himself a great steward. And I say a little prayer, and I ask Joseph to help me be a better steward of the gifts that you give. If you had asked me a few years ago, I would have told you that I was frustrated that, where the finances don't always work out. But what I've realized is that God takes care of us, and I'm learning to trust God more. God's also inviting me to be more generous with the gifts that I've been given. And often inspired by your generosity, I feel the need to give as generously as I can. A second way that stewardship has helped me is it's helped me to realize that I don't have to see everything happening all at once. I don't have to see the fruits of my labors immediately. Just like Naaman was obedient, and just like the lepers in today's gospel were obedient, so I'm realizing that just being obedient to what God is calling me to be, using my gifts and giving them generously, and that's enough. Like, I don't have to worry about the future. I don't have to worry about is it all working. Rather, I just have to use what I've been given to be a good steward of my gifts, and then I trust in God to take care of the rest. I really am learning to be more grateful for all the gifts around me. And that finally is the message from the gospel reading. Jesus meets 10 lepers. And just like Naaman the Syrian, Jesus doesn't wave his hand over the spot. He asks them to be obedient, to be childlike. He says, go show yourselves to the priests. The priests in the Jewish religion are responsible for examining a leper and certifying that he's been cured so that he can be reintegrated into the community. There's just a problem. These lepers haven't been cured. They're going to show themselves to the priests, but they're still sick. And yet, they trust in God, they do what he asks them to do, and they experience a cure as they're obeying him. And then only one of them then comes back and says thank you to Jesus. So often God blesses us in many ways, and we forget to be grateful. One of my favorite jokes is the joke of Patty, who's late for church, and he pulls into church, and the parking lot is completely full. And he goes, Lord, if you give me a parking spot, I will come to Mass every Sunday without fail. And he turns the corner, and there's a parking spot right up in front of church. No thanks, Lord, I found one myself. So often we ask God for things. God takes care of them, but it happens in such a natural way that we then think, oh, I did it for myself. Or, oh, it was inevitable. And we miss God's providence that's taking care of us, and we fail to be grateful. We fail to realize what a good God we have, a loving Father who cares for us. And so our annual stewardship renewal is a great opportunity for us not only to look at our gifts that we are being asked to give, but really to step back and realize that even the sufferings, even the burdens, even the challenges that we face are really gifts from God. I've been reading a Halloween horror story in Braille. Something bad is going to happen. I can feel it. Why did the witch have to walk everywhere? She never learned to drive stick. Grateful to both our choirs today, our choir loft choir and our children's choir, for praising the Lord. I'm sure you heard the children's choir. They're doing an awesome job. Also grateful for the news that there's a kind of a shaky peace deal between Israel and Hamas. You realize that in September, Pope Leo asked us to pray the rosary for peace during the month of October. Do you think it's a coincidence? If you've been praying the rosary, thank you. If not, I want to encourage you to consider praying the rosary every day, not just for peace in our world, but also for peace in our homes. I know the Lord has much more He wants to give us if only we'll ask.